Hi everyone, welcome to Etabs 2015 modeling tutorial. In this tutorial, you are going to learn how to model a commercial building in Etabs through illustrative steps. As you can see here, the entire modeling tutorial consists of 7 steps and its respective subdivisions. This is a beam column layout of a commercial building that we are going to model. The best practice is to plot the entire plan with grid lines before you start modeling the structure in Etabs. In this layout, I have defined grids at different beam and column joints along both X and Y direction. So here, at the left, I have assigned grid lines with coordinate values along Y direction. And at the top, I have assigned grid lines with coordinate values along X direction. So let's begin our tutorial from the first step. To create a new model, go to File and select New Model. And in this dialog box, select the third option, that is Use Built-in Settings With. And over here, select the desired display units, steel section database, steel design code, and the concrete design code according to your requirement. And after selecting these, click on OK. So here you can see a new dialog box that has opened, which is showing the grid dimensions and the story dimensions. So here, select the custom grid spacing and the custom story data. And under Add Structural Objects, select the grid only. And after all these selections, click on OK. So right now we can see that 3 windows has opened up. One is a Model Explorer, and the second one is a plan view window, and the third one is a 3D view window. So here, to start working on, I just need the plan view window. So close the Model Explorer and the 3D view. So our next step is to define grid along both axes for a model. For that, let's go to Edit and select Edit Stories and Grid Systems. So here you can see in a dialog box, and under Grid Systems, you can see already a grid system is being defined. But let's go and define a new one. So select Add New Grid System, and we will give a name for this grid, for the system, and let it be Grid 1. And as you can see, we are naming the grid along the X-axis in alphabetical order and along the Y-axis in numerical order. And now let's click on OK. So here you can see that already the grid 1 has been assigned, but we need to assign values to this grid 1. For that, go to Modify or Show Grid System. So in this dialog box, you can see a space over here. This is a space where we can assign the grid values along X-axis, and this is a space where we can assign the grid values along Y-axis. So before assigning it, there are 2 other options you can see under rectangular grids, because there are 2 ways you can assign the values, either as ordinates or as spacing. But here, let's opt for the display grid data as ordinates. And let's start assigning the grid values. So in my model, I have the grid values starting from A to N. So for adding the grid values, let's click on Add. So I have my grid values from A to N. So I need to edit these values with respect to each alphabetical order. So let's edit it. So values next is 2.7. So here I have finished assigning values from grid A to grid N. So similarly, let's assign values along the Y-axis. So here the coordinates are in numerical order. So the values be 5.7, 9, 11.5, and this be 13.5. So here you can see a short preview pane. So as you assign the values along the X-axis and Y-axis, you can see the formation of grid over here. So after specifying the grids along both axes, let's click on OK. So right now I'm done with gridding of the model. So before I go to the next step, I would like to delete G1 because I don't require G1 for further modeling. So I select G1 and delete it. Yes. So after gridding, our next step is assigning the story data. So over here, you can see that we have already assigned base plus 4 floors as our story data, that is base, story 1, story 2, story 3 and story 4. We can either edit or add stories further to this. So for that, go to modify or show story data. So here you can see the stories that has been assigned. So here I would like to make some changes. That is, here over story 1, I would like to change to P story. That is the ground floor. And change story 2 to story 1. And story 3 to story 2. And story 4 to story 3. And here the next step is assigning the height. So I prefer to assign 3 meters as height for story 1, story 2 and story 3. But I would like to change the height for P story from 3 to 0.45. This is for the plinth beam actually. So as I change the value, you can see that elevation value is also getting changed. So right now the height of my building is 9.45 meter. And the next step is assigning the master story. So in short, for example, how to explain a master story is that, suppose if I need to have a story similar to P story, that is, suppose if I need to have story 3, story 2 and story 1 similar to P story, I have to assign P story as my master story, change from no to yes, and I need to assign story 1, and here in similar to, I need to assign story 1 similar to P story, story 2 similar to P story, and here you can see that story 3 has been assigned as master story. So I change from yes to no, and I do the same with story 3 too. So here story 1, story 2 and story 3 has been assigned similar to P story, and P story is a master story. So I am done with assigning and editing the stories. So let's go to the next step. So story data and grid systems has been assigned. Click on OK. So here you can see the grid data has been assigned, and if you need to see the 3D view of it, go and click the 3D view. So here you can see a 3D view of the gridding and also the story. Before we define a beam, we had to assign the material properties of the section. So for defining the material properties, go to Define, select Material Properties and click on Add New Material. So here select the country you require, that is, I am selecting here India. The material type is concrete, the standard is Indian, and the grade I am going to select is M25, that is for my slab and for my beams. Click on OK. So here you can see the material property of M25 concrete, and click on OK. And other than M25, I need to assign one more material property, that is M30, that is for my columns actually. So go to Add New Material, change from M25 to M30, click on OK and select OK again. So you have already assigned the material property for your beam. And before assigning beams, let's change the view from 3D to plan. So here I'm planning to draw my beams in my P story, that is my master story. So select P story and click on OK. And for drawing my beams, before that we have to define our beams. So go to Define again, Section Properties, select Frame Sections, and I need to add a new property because I need a new beam actually. So select Add New Property, select the first option in the under concrete because I need a rectangular section, so select this one. So here you can assign the dimensions and the properties for your rectangular beam. So here I'm going to name it as B 240 to 500. Here you can assign the material, that is M25. And here you can, under section dimensions, you can assign the depth, that is 450 mm, and the width is 240 mm. And here you can see property modifiers, where you can change the modification factors. So here I'm just changing the torsion and moment of inertia. That is, I'm changing the torsional value from 1 to 0.01. That is which means that my beam is not going to take any torsion. And here I'm going to consider the effective moment of inertia. So I'm going to change the value from 1 to 0.35. And also over here I'm going to change to 0.35. And after making the modifications, click on OK. So here there is another option called reinforcement. So click on modify or show rebar. And here you can see that under design type, it is already being defaultly assigned as column. So as we are designing a beam, click on M3 design only beam. And here you can define the cover and the overrides for ductile beams. But right now, as for the modeling purpose, we don't have to do anything over here. So let's click on OK. And here if you click on the show section properties, you can see the various properties of the beam that we have just designed. And just click on OK. Click on OK. So similarly, you can add a new property for other beam also. But right now let's start with B 240 and 500. So click on OK. So before drawing the beams, I would like to change the one story icon over here to the similar stories. This is because as I'm modeling a building with typical floors, the beam positions on all the floors except the base will be the same. So if I draw a beam here, the same beam will be replicated on story 1, story 2, story 3 and story 4. And this is the reason why I changed one story to similar stories over here. So for drawing beam, go to the left side of the screen. So here you can see an icon called draw beam column raise. Click on it. So in this dialog box, the property you can see B240 500, the property of the beam that I have assigned. So close it and select all. So let's start drawing the beam. So here I have finished drawing all the beams on my piece story. So if you need to have a look on the beams without the gridding, go to the view option and select on set grid system visibility. So here you can see a view without the grid system. And if you want to see a 3D view, select 3D. And here you can see that other than the piece story, the beams has also been assigned in story 1, story 2 and story 3. This is because we have changed the one story to similar stories. So the beams have been automatically assigned to the above stories. So to define a column, go to define and under section properties, go to frame sections and let's add a new property for our column. So click on it. So under concrete, I need a rectangular section. So select the first icon. So here let's name our column, that is C240 into 400, and we have to assign the material for it. So I'm going to assign M30 grade concrete, and here we have to assign the section dimensions of the column. So my depth is 400 and the width of the column is 240 mm. And after assigning the dimensions, go to the property modifiers to modify a property. So here change the torsional constant from 1 to 0.01 and the moment of inertia along both axes from 1 to 0.7. This is actually effective moment of inertia, and if you want to know more about it, you can go to civilknowhow.com, and there is an article regarding the effective moment of inertia, so you can have a very good idea about it. So after changing these modification factors, go to OK, and under reinforcement, go to modify or show rebar. So here the column has been as a default been assigned, so you don't have to change anything here. So click on OK and OK. So here our column is being assigned. So the next step is to assign our columns into a layout. So before that, I would like to toggle my story, that by using these arrows we can toggle between our story. So I'm going to change from P story to my top story, that is fourth story. Okay, it's a third story actually. So I'm right now at the topmost story, and here change similar stories to all stories. So when I assign the column, it gets assigned to the all stories. And after all these changes, go to the left section of our screen and you can see an icon called Quick Draw Columns. So click on it. So here under property you can see a column being assigned, that is C240 to 400. So select it, and right now let's start assigning our column. So I want my column here, here, so I have finished assigning columns. So if you can go to 3D view, you can have a better view of it. So the columns has been assigned on all the 3 floors plus the plinth beam also. And let's go to the plan view. But in my actual plan, the orientation of my columns are not in a single direction, because some of my columns are in orientation with respect to 90 axis, and the columns over here are in orientation with an angle actually. So let me first select the columns that I need to orient to the 90 degrees. So those columns are So here I have selected a couple of columns which I need to orient to the 90 degree direction. So for doing that, first select the columns that you desire and go to assign and to the frame and select the local axis, and there is an option called angle. So select your desired angle. So my desired angle is 90 degree. Select on apply. OK. So here you can see the columns that I have selected before has changed its orientation or angle to the 90 degrees. And same is applicable for these 4 columns, because I need to orient these columns with respect to these beams actually. So let's get rid of this assigns. So before that, I need to measure the angle in which I have to orient the angle. So we can just take a draw beam, and you can see that the beam is almost 79.1 degree from the horizontal. So I need to change the axis of my columns to 79.1 degree. So select these columns. And go to assign, frame, local axis, select the desired angle, apply, OK. So here, if you can see that the column has changed its orientation or angle to 79.1 degree. So right now I'm done with assigning of columns. So here if I select this beam, you can see that the entire frame line is getting selected. This is because I have defined or assigned beam from this point to this point as a wall, and you can see the similar behavior over here, and also over here. But my intention here is I need to cut my beams or split my beams at the column joints. So for that I am selecting the entire structure because I want this to be applicable to the entire model, and I am selecting the joints in which I need to split the beams. So I need to select all the columns actually over here and deselect the points where you don't want to split. And here you can see an option that is known as divide frames. So select on divide frames and go to the second option, that is break at intersections with selected frames and joints, and click on apply and OK. And right now if you select it, you could see the beams have broken up at the column joints. And the next thing I need to do is that if you select this beam and this beam, you can find that instead of acting as a single beam, these two beams has been split up. So I need to merge these two beams. So what I need to do is, first of all, deselect the entire beams. Okay, fine. So select the beams that you need to merge, and there is a join frames option. Just click on it. And right now if you select on this beam, you can find that the two beams have merged to a single beam, and right now this is acting as a single beam. So right now we have finished assigning beams and columns in our model. So our next step is to define and assign the slab. So before going to that step, I would like to make a couple of changes. So I go to edit stories and grid systems. Here I would like to modify my story data. So here I have assigned my P story as my master story. So I would like to change my master story from P story to story 1. So I check yes over here, and here I assign the third and the second story similar to story 1. This is because I am assigning my slab to these three stories actually. So refresh the view. Okay. So next let's define a slab. So under section properties, go to slab sections. Click on add new property. So here I assign a 140 mm slab actually, and under slab material I select M25, and under modeling type I assign the slab as membrane. So under property data you can assign the thickness of the slab, which is 140 mm. Click on OK. Okay. So before assigning the slab, I would like to change my one story to the similar stories. So now let's go to leftmost side of our screen, and here you can see a draw rectangular floor or wall icon. Click on it and select the slab that you have to assign, that is S140, and select the joint between which you have to assign the slab. So I'm clicking here and dragging to the next joint. So here you can see that the slab has been assigned between these 4 frames. So here I would like to change my view all here. So I'm going to set display options so you can have a better view. I'm going to change to section properties, apply, OK. So similarly I'm going to define my slab between these 4 frames also. So here you can see that I have assigned my slab as individual between these 4 frames, but there is an alternate method which is much more effective actually, and you can save a lot of time too. That is, I'm going to select the slab from here to here. So over these 3 sections actually I have assigned a single slab. By adopting this method, I can save a lot of time. That is, I'm going to select the slab and the frames. So I need to split my slabs between these 2 frames. So for that, go to Edit, Edit Shells, Divide Shells. Check the first option, that is Cookie Cut Floor Objects at Selected Frame Objects. Click on Apply and OK. So now if you select, you could find that a single slab has been split into the 3 slabs. Similarly, you can do the same over here also. So next, I would like to assign my slab between these irregular frames actually. So the one important thing that you have to note is that when you assign a slab between irregular frames, you have to include the midpoint actually. The reason of including the midpoint of a frame is that only then you can have a proper load distribution from a slab to its corresponding beams in the case of an irregular frame. So here I select a draw floor or wall icon, select the joint here, select the midpoint. So here in this kind of irregular frame, if you select the midpoint, there will be a proper load distribution. So similarly, I'm going to assign my slab here. So next I need to assign the staircase. So here this portion and this portion I'm having a staircase. This is my main staircase and this is my fire stair. So for assigning the staircase, let's go to define again. In section properties, select the slab section, add a new property and let the property name be stair 200. So let it be M25 grade concrete. And under modeling type, select the membrane. So in the case of stairs actually, we are having a one-way distribution. We are assigning it as a one-way slab. So check this option, that is use special one-way load distribution. So under property data, assign this thickness. Okay. So let's assign the staircase right now. So select the stair 200. Similarly, as we assign a slab, you can assign a stair over here. So here you can see a one-way stair with the one-way distribution icon. Similarly, do the same over here. So here you can see that the orientation of the one-way distribution is opposite actually. So we need to change it. For that, select the slab, go to assign and under shell, go to the local axis and here select the angle or type the angle you require. Click on apply, OK. So now you can see that the orientation of the one-way distribution has been changed. So next, I need to define a sunshade besides my story 1, story 2, story 3 beams. Over here, that is along this direction and this direction, I need a cantilever slab actually, because I'm going to define my sunshade as a cantilever slab which is having a width of 0.6 meter. So let me first define a cantilever slab. So go to section properties, slab sections, add a new property. I'm going to name it as shade 120. Slab material will be M25. So as I'm going to define it as a cantilever slab, the modeling type should be shell thin, and here the thickness is 120 mm. Okay. So before assigning the slabs or defining the slabs on these two both sides, I would like to replicate my beams over here and over here to a distance of 0.6 meter. That is, I'm going to offset these beams to a distance of 0.6 meter on these both sides. So for offsetting, that means first select the beams in this side. Go to edit, and in replicate, select the linear option. And first I need to offset along the y direction, that is opposite to the negative y direction. So as a width is 0.6 meter, I'm going to assign the value as 0.6. Apply. So here you can see that the offset is being made from this beam to this beam of 0.6 meter. Similarly, you can offset these beams to a distance of 0.6 meter by using the replicate option. But here the replication must be made, or the offset must be made along the x-axis. So I'm going to give 0.6 meter. Apply. OK. So here you can see the beam is being offset from here, from this beam. And now let me assign my sunshade. So select shade 120, which is my sunshade, the slab tool. So the shade has been defined in this direction. Now I need to define in this direction. So repeat the same option. So after assigning the slabs on the both direction, now I can delete these beams actually. So now I have defined my sunshade along these three floors. So here I have created two beams for my carports. So what I need is that I need to mirror these two beams to this side. So for that, first create a temporary beam. Let it be B240 to 500. So I'm just drawing a temporary beam with respect to I need to mirror these two beams. So after creating a temporary beam, select the two beams that I need to mirror. Then go to edit and go to replicate. And under mirror option, you could see mirror above the line 1, 2. So which means that with respect to which line you have to mirror the objects you have selected. So I need to mirror my line with respect to this line. So pick 2 points on the model. So click on this option. So I'm picking up my line 1, 2. And after selecting the line, go to apply. So here you can see that my carports beams has been mirrored to the other side. And after mirroring, delete the temporary beam and let me assign a slab. And the next tool that I'm going to explain is the chamfer tool, which we use for slab corners. So suppose if you need to have a cornered edge in this corner of the slab, select the full slab, select the corner in which you have to have the cornered edge, that is where you want to do the chamfering. Go to edit. In edit shells, there's an option called chamfer slab corners, and here I needed a rounded edge fillet. So I have already assigned a value called 500 mm. Apply. So here you can see that my cornered edge has been changed to a rounded edge. So here I am having a G+2 building. So my next step is to add a new floor on the top of the second floor, which is having a similar section and properties of the below floor. So for that, go to Edit Stories and Grid Systems, Modify Show Story Data. Over here, beside Story 3, you can see an arrow icon. So right click on it, and you can find Add Story option and select the first one, that is Keep Existing Story Heights. And in Story Data, select the story height. So I'll go with 3 meter itself. And the number of added stories, for me, I just require 1 story. And I need to insert above my third story, or you can change the third story to 2, whichever you like. And I need to replicate my new story, which is very much similar to story 3. So click on OK. So now you can see a new story has been added. Okay, so here you can see on the top of my second floor, a third story is also being added here. So now my building is a G+3. So next what I'm going to do is that I need to select my P story only. That I don't want to see my first, second and third. I just need to see my P story. So for that, go to Select. In Select, select the stories and select P story. So now the P story has been selected, and after selecting the P story, go to View and select Show Selected Objects Only. So my P story has been selected and the rest of the stories has been disappeared. So let me have a plan view of it. So here you can see the beams which are in blue in color. These beams are the typical beams that I have assigned for story 1, story 2, story 3. But here in P story, I need to assign a different set of beams which I have named already as plinth beam. So before assigning the beams, I would like to change the visibility of my columns. So for changing the visibility, go to the View, select Set Display Options and unselect columns. Apply. OK. So here my columns has been disappeared. So I can right now select my beams that I need to reassign in a very easy manner. So I have finished selecting my beams. Now I need to assign my plinth beam properties over here. So select the frame, go to section property, and this is my plinth beam actually, that is PB 300 into 450. Select it, select apply. OK. So now you can see the properties of the beam that I have assigned before has been changed to the plinth beam property. And now to go back to the previous view, go to the View and select Show All Objects. And if you go to View again and select Set Display Options, select Columns again, apply. OK. So now you can have a clear view of this model. So here, if you just look through the plan of the model, you can find an area is being left out. So this is actually a lift area, and here I need to assign a retaining wall of 20 centimeter thickness over these 3 sides. So first let me define a retaining wall. So for that, go to Define, Section Properties, Wall Section, Add New Property. and I'll name it as retaining wall, and let the wall material be M30 and the modeling type be membrane and the thickness be 200 mm, and select OK. OK. What I have selected here as all stories over here, so that my retaining wall gets assigned throughout the story. And for assigning the retaining wall, select the draw option of draw walls from the leftmost side of the Etabs panel and select the property as retaining wall. So I'm assigning my retaining wall. So to have a better view of my retaining wall, let me switch off the visibility of the beams and the floors. So here you can have a better view of the retaining wall. And next, go to the plan. So since I'm having retaining wall over here, I don't need to have a column, so I'm deleting the column. So let me go to the previous view. I need to open my beams and floors. So here I need to define this area as an open space. It's not a necessary step, but still there is an option. So let's try it out. We select the property of opening and we assign here. So here I have assigned an opening between the retaining walls, and if you can go through the different plan view, you can see that the retaining wall and the openings has been assigned in each and every floor. Here I have finished modeling my structure. So in Etabs 2015, there is a couple of very interesting model view options. So to have a 3D geometrical view of the slab, beam and column elements, let's go to View and set Display Options and select the Extrude Frames and Extrude Shells. So here I'm going to extrude both frames and shells. Click on Apply and OK. So now you can see an extruded view of our model. And there is also another view option which is known as 3D rendering. So go to View, and here the second last option, Show Rendered View, select on it. Yeah, so now you can see the rendered view of our building. And in this 3D rendered view, there is pretty cool options actually. That is, one, you can pan through the model. The next one is you can rotate through it. And there is a look around option where you can look around the model. And there is another pretty cool thing, that is a walk option. That is by clicking the left mouse button, you can just go into the model. And this is a very interesting option also. So this comes to the end of Etabs 2015 modeling tutorial, and thanks to you all for watching.